Hello magical hands and welcome to Sew with Jessica. For today's tutorial, I'll be sharing with you guys how I made this lovely simple free dress with the asoke design on the neckline and also on the sleeve area. This picture right here is the inspiration of this dress. If it's something you're interested in learning, make sure to keep on watching. So for my fabric, I have 6 yards of Ankara fabric here, but I'll not be using everything. So I also have this asoke here and I have just one line. You can see how long one line is. It's going to be enough to get what I want. So I just opened up this fabric so you can see. You know that usually these Ankara fabrics, the lengths are usually 46, 45 thereabouts. It's not up to 50 or so. So I'm going to be using the yards area for the length. So I'm just opening the fabric up. This part that I'm showing you is the parts where the yards are measured. Okay, like I said, I have 6 yards. So my client's length is 64 inches. That's her full length. She's quite big, so that is why the full length is much. Her full length is 64 inches, but I'll be using 66 so I can have sewing allowance on the shoulder area and also to hem the base of the dress. So from that area where the yards are measured, I'm going to mark 66 inches. That is the length. I'm going to mark 66, and once I've gotten my 66 inches there, I'm going to fold the fabric from that 66 inches. And now I can cut out the remaining excess, which can be used for your scarf or anything at all. So moving on, this is exactly everything that I'll be needing now. I'm going to now clap everything so that I can be able to cut out both the front and back piece at once. So I'll just clap it down just as seen. And this is exactly how you're going to arrange your fabric. So right at the top part there, I marked 1 inch downwards and I'm going to rule out a straight line just as seen. This 1 inch is going to indicate my starting line. Right on the starting line, I'm going to mark 3.5 inches. That is going to be for the neck width that I'll be using. And that is going to be for both the front and back neck width. So in order to mark my back neck depth, I marked 2 inches downwards from that starting line. And I'll create a curve from the neck width of 3.5 inches to meet the 2 inches that I just marked as the neck depth. For the front neckline, I'm going to mark 7 inches downwards from that starting line. You can mark 8, you can mark 9, depending on how deep you want this to be. And it's going to be a V neckline. So I'm going to connect a slanted line this time around from that 3.5 inches we have at the neck width to meet that point there. So that will be with the front neckline. Now I'll place my tape from that starting line and I'm going to mark down from her shoulder to her bust point. Hers is 14 inches, so I just marked it there and I ruled out a straight line just as seen. Next we are marking will be from the shoulder to the waistline. Okay, do well to skip your under bust line because this is a free dress, and I'll rule out a straight line there. Next is going to be from the shoulder to the hip line. Now I'll rule out a straight line at that point. These are the 3 basic measurements we are going to need: your bust line, waistline, and then your hip line. And of course, we already have the full length. At the bust point line, you're going to take your round bust measurements, divide it by 4 and mark it right there, whatever it gives you. After which I'm going to add 3 inches for ease. The next line will be the waistline. I'll take the waist measurement, divide by 4, and I'll mark it on that line. Then I'll add 3 inches for ease. Next will be the hip line, and on the hip line I'll take my round hip measurement, divide by 4, and I'll mark it on right there, and I'm going to add 3 inches for ease on the hip line. So whatever measurement I have along that hip line there, which totally I have is 15 inches now, which is plus the ease allowance, I'll bring that measurement to the full length and I'll mark it just as seen. Now I will start connecting these lines together, and I'll just start connecting from the hip to the full length with a straight line, and then I'll connect it to the waistline and then to the bust point. Now for the shoulder width, for the shoulder line, I marked downwards 8 inches. That's going to be the sleeve opening, which is perfect. And then I created a curve from that point to blend into the bust point line just as seen. So I later realized that I'm still going to add asoke to the sleeve. So I just went ahead and then I marked my sleeve length properly, because if I add the asoke to this particular sleeve length, it's going to be too long. So basically what I did was I marked the shoulder measurement divided by 2, which is there, and then I marked 10 inches for the sleeve length. So I'll just connect that 10 inches down, just as you can see. This is going to be it. So this is where my sleeve will stop, because I'll still add asoke and Now that I'm almost done, I'm going to start adding up my sewing allowance, which I'm using 1 inch. So I'll just connect it as seen, and then I'll go ahead and mark my pocket. So for my pocket, I marked 19 inches downwards from the shoulder line, which is around her waistline. And then I just placed my hand in a slanted form like this. So I'm going to just draw a shape-like diagram. Just take your time and draw this properly around that area, just as seen. So this way I know I am not cutting my pocket separately. Everything will just be cut out at once. So after cutting out the shoulder part, I'm going to now cut out the neckline. I started off with the back neckline, which is the simple curve. I'll open up the fabric and remove one piece. That piece I kept aside will be the back piece. And now I'll cut out the front neckline, which is a V neckline. Just make sure everything is placed nice and neat. And there we have it. Now I brought out my asoke and I'm going to mark the length of the asoke design I want to put. So I'm going to be using 17 inches, but because I'm going to have to hem, I'll just mark 18 inches. I'll go ahead and I'll cut it out, and then I'll still cut a duplicate of this asoke again, which should look like this. I'll keep the remaining piece aside and I'm going to place the asoke on each other just as seen, and I'll just join it up. So just in case you've not joined the asoke before, this is a easy method. This is a tutorial on how to join asoke. It's very simple. You just place them on each other. So the edge of asoke does not fray, except you use your scissors to cut it out. It does not fray, and that is why this is the only method to join your asoke together. It comes out really neat. So now we've been able to make a more bigger piece of this asoke. We are going to bring back the front piece, right? This is how it should be placed on the front piece. I'll fold back my front piece into 2, just as you can see, and then I'll also fold the asoke into 2. So after folding it into 2, I'm going to place the asoke underneath the main dress. Just make sure that it aligns at the center front area properly, and it also aligns along the shoulder line area too. So now you are going to cut out the neckline of your actual blouse or dress on your asoke fabric. So I'll open it up so we can see this is the right face of the fabric. I actually chalked on the right face, which is wrong. Pretty sure I'm chalking on the wrong face, and this is what the design should look like. So like I said, the edge of the asoke does not fray, except this part that we've already used scissors on. So you see this lower part, I'm only going to fold it once and top stitch, but you see this other side, I'm just going to sew it as seen because it does not fray. So I am done sewing it to the dress, and the only part I did not sew it to was the neckline. That's because we're going to use a lining to turn it. So this is what everything looks like on fold. Now I'll bring in my lining that is already folded. Now if you don't want to use a lining, you can just go ahead and cut an interface, or you can even use a bias to finish up the neckline if that's what you want. But I'm using a lining for this. So I'll just go ahead and I'll transfer this exact fabric to the lining fabric. Just transfer everything you're seeing here to the lining as well. I also cut out the lining for the back piece. So now I'm going to keep all the linings aside and I'll start working on the main Ankara piece here. So I'll place it right face facing each other. That's the back piece and the front piece. I'll place them right face facing each other. And I'll sew up the shoulder line as well. So note that anything we are doing right now to this main fabric, we're also going to do it to the lining piece as well. But we are just going to be sewing the lining separately, and we'll just keep it aside for now. So now that I've placed the fabrics together, I'm going to, after I've joined the shoulder together, this is what it looks like. So I'm going to open this up along the neckline area, and I'll bring my asoke so that I'll cut it out for the sleeve. So you can decide to stitch your asoke on the fabric at the sleeve area. Okay, you can decide to just sew it on it, or you can decide to attach it to it. I'm going to be attaching mine, but you can decide to sew it on it, just like I explained. So I cut it into 2 like this. You can decide to sew it like this, the way it is. Sew both edge on it if that's what you want. Sew both the top and the lower part. But me, I just attached it like separately from it, which is still totally optional. So I'll place it like this, and I'll bring my lining and I'll place the lining right face facing the right face of the actual fabric, and I'm going to sew along the neckline. Only the neckline area first. So after sewing it, I'm going to notch all around it so that it will relax properly, especially that V part. Make sure you notch it very well so that it will relax by the time you flip the lining to the wrong face of the fabric. So I'll open everything up, and this is what it will look like. I'll go ahead and I'll iron it down, And yes, you start rolling from one side of the armhole area in order for us to turn the armhole, right? And then I'll hold up the fabric like this, and then I'm going to bring out the lining and sew it on it, so that it will be sewn, it will be top stitched. So like I said earlier, you can sew your band on your asoke, you can sew your asoke on the fabric, so you just go ahead and just turn it normally, but I attached mine separately, which is still cool. So after we are done turning that side of the armhole, which is what is looking like of the sleeve, sorry, I'm going to still repeat the same thing to the other side. Now everything is prepped, the sleeve, everything is ready. I'm going to place it right facing each other, and we are going to sew up all the sewing allowances that we added earlier. So my client indicated that she wants hers to have a slit, so I sewed everything, and then I stopped at 48 inches. That is where the slit is going to be. So at that slit area, I'm just going to hem it down, just as you can see, just a proper hem, and then I will sew close to the edge, and then I'm going to hem the base of the dress. This is basically everything. This brings us to the end of this tutorial. I hope you learned something. If you did, make sure to give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to share this video, because that will help you to recommend this channel to other people. And that being said, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.